Hey everyone, and welcome back. Before we dive into today's story, if you believe in the power of truth and fighting for what's yours, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of resilience, and drop a comment below about a time you had to stand up for yourself. It means the world to know we're all in this together. My name is Sarah Chen Williams. I'm 35, and I live in Austin, Texas. And I want to tell you how I built a business with my best friend and my husband, only to discover they were building a plan to destroy me. It began as most great and terrible things do, with a dream. For 10 years, I'd been a marketing executive at a Fortune 500 company. I had the corner office, the six-figure salary, the endless parade of beige conference rooms and PowerPoints that bled into one another. I was successful, but I was hollow. My dream wasn't to climb someone else's ladder. It was to build my own. And that dream had a name, Bloom & Co. The idea was simple, born from my own desire for a home that felt both beautiful and responsible. Sustainable home goods, ethically sourced linens, hand-poured soy candles in recycled glass, minimalist ceramics from local artisans. It was a concept that buzzed with the energy of Austin itself, progressive, stylish, and deeply connected to its roots. There was only one person I could imagine building this with, Emma Rodriguez, my best friend since we were 7 years old, the keeper of my childhood secrets and my partner in crime through awkward teenage years and messy 20s. Emma was the practical one, the operational genius who could look at a spreadsheet and see a story. I was the visionary, the marketer who could take a feeling and turn it into a brand. We were the perfect pair. I still remember the night I pitched it to her, sitting on the porch of my craftsman-style home, the Texas heat finally breaking as dusk settled. "I'm going to do it, Em," I said, my voice trembling with a terrifying cocktail of fear and excitement. "I'm quitting. I'm cashing out my savings." Emma's eyes, usually so calm and steady, lit up. "You're serious, all in." "All in," I confirmed. That night, we mapped it out on a cocktail napkin. My entire life savings, $85,000, would be the seed. But we needed more. We needed a real loan to secure suppliers and a small warehouse space. That's where my husband, David, came in. David was a financial advisor. He was handsome, charming, and possessed an air of quiet confidence that had always made me feel safe. He understood numbers in a way I never could. When I laid the business plan before him, he smiled that reassuring smile of his. "It's solid, Sarah. Ambitious, but solid. I believe in you. I believe in both of you." He not only helped us refine the financial projections, but he also offered to co-sign the $150,000 business loan. "We're a team, right?" he'd said, kissing my forehead. "Your dream is my dream." And just like that, the trio was born. Sarah, the brand visionary, Emma, the operations guru, and David, our trusted financial guide. We felt unstoppable. The first year was a blur of beautiful, exhausting chaos. I poured every ounce of my corporate experience and every drop of my passion into Bloom & Co. I worked 70-hour weeks, personally designing our packaging, writing every word of web copy, and forging relationships with bloggers and influencers. I lived and breathed our brand ethos. The scent of lavender and eucalyptus from our candle tests clung to my clothes. My hands were perpetually stained with dye samples for our organic cotton throws. Emma, meanwhile, was the engine room. She managed inventory, wrangled suppliers, and kept the day-to-day humming. And David was our rock. He'd often stop by the small office we rented on the east side after his workday, ostensibly to go over the books. "Just want to make sure you two are tracking towards profitability," he'd say, pulling up a chair next to Emma's desk. More and more, those sessions stretched late into the evening. "David's a lifesaver," Emma would tell me. "I'd be drowning in invoices without him." Sometimes, they'd go for business dinners to discuss strategy. I was so grateful. I was also so tired, so deep in the creative trenches, that I didn't question it. I saw only what I wanted to see, my two favorite people working together to make our collective dream a reality. And the dream was coming true. We were a hit. A feature in a major design blog went viral. Then came the first big contract with a boutique hotel chain. Then a national retailer wanted an exclusive line. Within 12 months, we had cleared $500,000 in contracts. We were a bona fide Austin success story. The cracks, when they appeared, were so small I almost missed them. They were hairline fractures in the perfect facade we had built. The first was a purse. Emma, who had always been a jeans and t-shirt girl, showed up to a meeting with a Celine handbag slung over her shoulder. It was a beautiful, buttery leather thing that screamed $4,000. "Wow, splurging a little?" I asked, trying to sound celebratory. She waved a dismissive hand, a gesture that was somehow both breezy and defensive. "Oh, I got an insane deal on a resale site. A total steal. Had to grab it." I was the one who managed our payroll. I knew what she was making. Even with a steal, it was a stretch. A little alarm bell, tinny and distant, rang in the back of my mind. I silenced it. She deserved to treat herself. We all did. Then there was David. He became increasingly protective of his phone, angling the screen away from me when he texted, his thumbs flying. If I walked into the room, he'd lock it and set it face down with a speed that felt unnatural. "Just a demanding client," he'd mutter, or "endless work drama. Don't want to bore you." The easy intimacy we'd always shared began to feel guarded, as if there were invisible walls going up around him. The biggest red flag, however, was about the business itself. Flushed with our success, I drew up a plan to expand our product line into sustainable kitchenware. I presented it at our quarterly meeting, my slides full of market research and glowing projections. "The timing is perfect," I said, buzzing with energy. "We have the capital, we have the brand recognition. We should strike while the iron is hot." Emma didn't meet my eyes. She stared at a spot on the conference table, her brow furrowed. "I don't know, Sarah. I've been looking at the numbers. Cash flow is tighter than you think. I think we need to be conservative, build up our reserves." David, sitting at the head of the table in his self-appointed advisor role, nodded gravely. "Emma's right. Growth is great, but not at the expense of stability. You're looking at revenue, not net profit. We have to factor in overhead, COGS, marketing spend." He continued, weaving a web of financial jargon that was designed to make me feel like a naive creative who didn't understand the serious business of money. I felt a flash of frustration. "But we landed the Rosedale contract. That alone is huge. Where is all that money going?" "It's being reinvested, Sarah," Emma said, her tone laced with a weary patience that made my skin prickle. "Inventory, shipping, staff. It costs money to make money." They presented a united front of cautious pragmatism. I felt foolish, like I was the reckless one, the child who wanted more dessert when the adults knew it was time for bed. I backed down, but the feeling didn't go away. It coiled in my gut, a cold snake of doubt. We were a success. Why did it feel like we were broke? Trust is like profit margins. Once it starts to shrink, everything is at risk of collapse. My trust was eroding, and I needed to understand why. The discovery didn't happen with a dramatic confrontation. It happened on a quiet Tuesday night. A supplier, one of our earliest partners, had called me directly, a little flustered. "Sarah, hi. It's John from Cedar Creek Pottery. Look, I hate to do this, but we're still waiting on payment for invoice 74B. It's 90 days past due." I froze. "That's impossible, John. I saw that invoice get processed. Emma handled it." "Well, the money never hit our account," he said kindly. "Maybe just check on your end." That night, I told David I was going back to the office to catch up on some design work. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. Inside our empty, silent office, I sat at Emma's computer. My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt like a trespasser, a betrayer. But John's call was a loose thread, and I had to pull it. I opened our accounting software. Invoice 74B was marked paid. I pulled up the transaction record. The payment hadn't gone to Cedar Creek Pottery. It had gone to something called Apex Logistical Solutions. I'd never heard of them. I searched for other payments to Apex. There were dozens of them, all for odd, substantial amounts, categorized under vague labels like consulting fees or expedited shipping. My blood ran cold. With trembling fingers, I opened a new browser tab and searched for Apex Logistical Solutions, Austin, Texas. No website, no address, no phone number. It didn't exist. It was a shell, a ghost, a bucket. My breath hitched. I logged into our primary business bank account. The balance was shockingly low, just as Emma had claimed. It was just enough to cover payroll and basic expenses. I scrolled through months of statements, my eyes scanning for the Apex payments. There they were, a steady drain from our lifeblood. Then I saw it. A recurring monthly transfer. A small, seemingly innocuous transfer from our main account to a secondary business account I didn't recognize. An account I had never been given access to. It took me another hour of frantic, desperate searching through our initial incorporation documents, stored on our shared drive, to find the bank information for that secondary account. My name wasn't on it, only Emma's. I felt sick, my best friend, my sister stealing from me, stealing from us. I needed proof of where the money was going. With a sickening sense of dread, I started looking through the company credit card statements, which were linked to the main account. I was looking for financial clues, for payments to Apex, for anything that would explain the hole in our finances. And that's when I found the second betrayal, the one that shattered not just my business, but my entire world. There were charges, dozens of them, not for vendors or supplies, but for hotels. The Driscoll Downtown, the South Congress Hotel, Hotel St. Cecilia, all booked on weeknights, and the reservation name was Emma Rodriguez. It was David Williams, my husband. The dates on the receipts corresponded perfectly with the nights David had worked late, the evenings he and Emma had business dinners. It was all there, in black and white. A year-long affair, funded by the company I had poured my soul and my savings into. The air left my lungs. The office walls seemed to close in, the scent of our calm collections, lavender and chamomile, suddenly suffocating. I stumbled back from the desk, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a sob. It wasn't just theft. It was a conspiracy. I kept digging, propelled by a horrifying, masochistic need to know the full extent of the wreckage. I found the text messages. They had used a messaging app, but they hadn't been careful enough to erase the trail from the linked cloud backup. Emma, she's buying the cash flow problem. We can keep siphoning for another few months easily. David, good. I'm tired of pretending to be impressed by her marketing fluff. Once we have enough capital, we launch Verd, you and me. Emma, what about her, when we tell her? David, she'll cry, she'll yell, and then she'll break. She'll be too much of a mess to fight back. We'll offer her a tiny buyout and she'll take it just to make the pain stop. I know her. I know her. Those 3 words were a blade that twisted in my gut. He thought he knew me. He thought I was weak. The final blow came when I found a folder buried deep within a subfolder labeled Personal. Inside was a fully formed business plan, complete with financial projections and a marketing strategy. The company name was Verd Home. It was our business model, sustainable, minimalist, chic, but with a different name. It listed our suppliers. It had our entire client list appended to the back. And at the bottom of the incorporation filing document, dated 3 weeks prior, were the names of the 2 principals, Emma Rodriguez and David Williams. They hadn't just stolen my money. They were stealing my business, my future, my very identity. They were planning to push me out, leave me with the debt of a failing company, and rise from the ashes of my ruin. I went home in a daze. When David came into the bedroom, smiling, asking how my night was, something inside me snapped. I confronted him. I didn't scream. My voice was eerily calm. I know, David. I know about the money. I know about the affair. I know about Verd Home. The charming mask slipped. For a second, I saw pure panic in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a chillingly smooth performance of indignation. What are you talking about? Sarah, you're not making any sense. You've been under so much stress, you're getting paranoid. He reached for me, and I flinched away as if from a hot iron. You're destroying our friendship with Emma with these crazy accusations. The next day, Emma called me, her voice dripping with faux concern. Sarah, honey, David told me you're having a hard time. Maybe you should take a step back from the business for a while. The stress is clearly getting to you. You're having some kind of breakdown. Gaslighting, a coordinated, two-front assault on my sanity. They wanted me to believe I was the crazy one. They thought I would crumble. They thought I would cry and walk away with whatever scraps they threw me. They didn't know me at all. That night, sitting alone in my silent house, surrounded by the beautiful things I had created for a life that was now a lie, the heartbreak finally receded. It didn't disappear, but it crystallized. It hardened from a molten, agonizing grief into something cold, sharp, and purposeful. A diamond forged in the crucible of betrayal. They thought I'd cry and walk away. Instead, I opened my laptop and called my lawyer. My first call wasn't to a divorce attorney. It was to a forensic accountant, a man named Mr. Abernathy, who spoke in quiet, precise tones and looked at my meticulously gathered evidence with an almost reverent appreciation. My second call was to Alina Davenport, one of the most feared business litigation attorneys in Texas. She was a shark in a Chanel suit, and when I laid out the story for her, she didn't offer sympathy. She offered a strategy. A cold, calculated, and beautiful strategy. "They've done you a favor, Ms. Chen Williams," she said, her voice a low, confident hum. "Their greed has made them sloppy. Emma's actions constitute felony theft. And David, as both your spouse in a community property state and an unofficial financial advisor to the business, hasn't just breached your trust. He's breached his fiduciary duty on multiple actionable levels. This isn't just a breakup. This is a detonation." For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was the slightly withdrawn, seemingly stressed-out business partner. I agreed to take a small step back, as Emma had so helpfully suggested. I let them think their gaslighting was working, that I was fragile and losing my grip. But by night, I was a general preparing for war. With Mr. Abernathy's guidance, I methodically documented everything. Every fake invoice for Apex Logistical Solutions. Every hotel receipt, cross-referenced with David's calendar and text messages. I created a timeline of the affair, noting how charges for lavish dinners and gifts for Emma appeared on our joint personal credit cards, which David managed. He hadn't just used my company to fund his affair. He'd used my own money, too. I documented the theft of our intellectual property, the entire Verd home business plan, the client lists, the supplier contacts. Alina's team drafted the civil lawsuit, a masterpiece of legal devastation targeting them both for embezzlement, breach of contract, breach of fiduciary duty, and tortious interference with business. The day of the confrontation arrived. I scheduled an emergency business meeting with a subject line that read, "Exciting new opportunities and Q3 restructuring." I wanted them walking in confident, even arrogant. I sat at the head of our conference table, the same table where they had patronized and dismissed me. I was dressed in a sharp black power suit. My hands were steady. My heart was a cold, rhythmic drum. They walked in together, smiling condescendingly at me. David sat to my right, Emma to my left, a pincer movement of betrayal. "So," David began, leaning back in his chair with an air of magnanimous authority. "What's this exciting opportunity, Sarah? Finally decided to take our advice and think smaller." I gave them a small, tight smile. "Something like that. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce a new strategic advisor who is joining us for this meeting." I turned my laptop around. On the screen, live via video call, was Alina Davenport, her expression utterly implacable. The change in the room was instantaneous. The smugness evaporated from David's face, replaced by a flicker of confusion. Emma's smile faltered. "Ms. Davenport is a partner at Davenport and Associates," I said, my voice clear and steady. "She's here to oversee the dissolution of our professional partnership and the subsequent legal proceedings. This meeting is being recorded." I slid 2 thick, spiral-bound documents across the table, one in front of Emma, one in front of David. "Let's start with the financials," I said, clicking the first slide of a presentation I had prepared. It was a graph showing the company's revenue versus the money deposited into our operating account. A massive gap yawned between the 2 lines. As you can see, there is a discrepancy of $182,450. That money, we've discovered, was funneled into a shell corporation, Apex Logistical Solutions, before being transferred to a secondary account at Capital One Bank. I looked directly at Emma. Her face had gone chalk white. An account, Emma, that is solely in your name. I clicked to the next slide. It was a collage of her recent designer purchases, culled from her social media, next to the dates of the fraudulent transfers. The selling bag was front and center. I turned to David. Now, let's talk about breach of fiduciary duty. The next slide was a photo of the Hotel St. Cecilia, followed by copies of the receipts booked in his name and charged to the company. These expenses, totaling over $12,000, are difficult to justify as business dinners, wouldn't you agree? David started to speak, to bluster, but Aliner's voice cut through the speaker, sharp as glass. Mr. Williams, I would strongly advise you to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the civil suit that was filed with the Travis County Courthouse 1 hour ago. He snapped his mouth shut. Emma looked like she was going to be physically sick. And finally, I said, clicking to the last, most damning slide. It was the logo for Verd Home. The theft of intellectual property, client lists, and supplier relationships to start a competing firm. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to an icy whisper. You built a plan to destroy me, but you underestimated me. You thought I was the emotional, fragile artist. You forgot I spent 10 years in the corporate world. I know how to read a room, and I know how to build a case. Aliner took over. She calmly, brutally laid out their options. They could fight, and she would not only pursue the civil case to its fullest extent, ruining them financially, but she would also hand over the evidence of embezzlement to the district attorney, which would trigger a criminal investigation and likely lead to felony charges for Emma. Or they could sign the settlement agreement I had prepared. The terms were not negotiable. Emma would relinquish her 50% ownership of Bloom and Co. to me, effective immediately, for the sum of $1. She would repay the full $182,450 she had embezzled, which would require the immediate liquidation of her car, her designer wardrobe, and any other assets she possessed. Failure to comply would result in the aforementioned referral to the DA. David would agree to an uncontested divorce. Due to the clear evidence of adultery and the use of marital assets to fund it, he would forfeit any claim to my shares in the now wholly owned Bloom & Co. and would be responsible for his own significant legal fees. A non-disclosure and non-compete agreement so ironclad, they couldn't open a lemonade stand in the sustainable goods sector for the next 10 years. They sat there, utterly broken, the architects of my destruction, undone by a PowerPoint presentation and their own hubris. They signed. 6 months later, the dust has settled. Or rather, it settled for me. David lost his financial advisor license after I filed a formal complaint with the CFP board, complete with evidence of his ethical breaches. His reputation in Austin's tight-knit financial community is shot. Emma is, from what I hear, working in retail. Her luxury lifestyle, funded by my hard work, is a distant memory. Their grand venture, Verd Home, never even launched. Turns out, no investor wants to back partners who have a documented history of stealing from their last one. And me, I own 100% of Bloom & Co. The story of what happened, told in hushed, respectful tones in Austin's entrepreneurial circles, has become a strange sort of marketing tool. People respect the fight. They respect the precision. Business has never been better. We just signed a national distribution deal that will double our previous year's revenue. I rebuilt my company, but more importantly, I rebuilt myself. The pain of the betrayal is still there, a faint scar on my heart, but it no longer defines me. It's a reminder of my own strength. I'm dating now, a man I met at a tech incubator. He's an entrepreneur, too. He thinks my legal strategy was a thing of beauty and tells me my integrity is the sexiest thing about me. He's right. They were wrong about so many things, but their biggest mistake was thinking my passion made me weak. They didn't understand that true passion, when betrayed, doesn't just break. It burns, and it can be channeled. They thought my heart was my biggest liability. It turns out it was my greatest asset. The best revenge isn't living well. Turns out the best revenge is just better business. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your own stories of resilience in the comments. Remember, you are always stronger than those who try to tear you down.